There we go.
All right.
Good afternoon and good morning, wherever you are, wherever you're joining us from. Our West Coast friends, it's still morning. Our East Coast friends, it is noon. So welcome wherever you're joining us from. We're going to get right to it because we know these midday webinars, a lot of you are coming from clinic or in between OR times or other things. So we're going to jump right in. We are excited to share with you our webinar on our Georgetown Townhomes deal deep dive. And we're actually closing tomorrow.
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, it is pretty exciting. So literally the meeting after this, we're meeting with the accountant to get all the wires for cash to close and everything all buttoned up. So super timely. And Nick and I are so excited about it. We drive past this asset twice a day. It's between our personal home and our office. It's like kind of really close to where our kids all go to school and daycare and those sorts of things. And it's going to be fun that tomorrow when we drive by it, we'll be driving by it as owners with all of our investors. So super, super excited about that. Welcome everyone to our presentation. We'll get the screen share going and we will jump right in.
This is an interactive show here. So whether you're an investor in the funds that are purchasing this property, or you're thinking about being an investor, or you're just curious to learn more about how we think about properties, how we analyze properties, and why we think this property is so awesome, just go ahead and throw your questions in chat. We'll do our best to answer those in real time while still keeping things tight here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. Let's get going.
So our usual disclaimer here that we're going to share some information that is our business plan, and we recommend that if you're contemplating investment, that you check with your advisors, talk to your accountant, attorney, CFP, whoever you trust to advise you. You should absolutely do that. This is not investing advice, and we are definitely not accountants or attorneys or anything of that nature ourselves. We have our usual disclaimer stuff there. I think our attorneys are happy with about this much time to have it up on the slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Any forward-looking statements are exactly that. They're our best predictions of how we think the asset will behave based on our past performance, but forward-looking statements are never guaranteed. We will share with you historical factual information about an asset that we also own and manage, Douglas Trail Townhomes, that we've rebranded to name Dakota. And so those are retrospective factual information from our ownership of that asset. So we'll share that a little bit later, and a little bit about us.
Yeah, we finally got this slide updated. It's been a little while. So we're up to over $350 million in assets under management. It's crazy to say that number out loud. We've raised over $70 million in capital. We added it up, and we've got at least $180 million in lifetime real estate sales. I'm a licensed real estate agent. Hang my license here at Keller Williams. We've got an amazing real estate sales team, and we've now hit over $50 million in ground up construction. So just a few data points as to why you might want to listen to things that we have to say. Why when we speak, we have a little bit of authority. And then just looking at our recent track record here, now's kind of a tough time in the market in the multifamily space. Real estate syndication, private equity. We've had no capital calls. We don't expect to have any capital calls, and we've never lost money on a real estate deal, which is sadly a somewhat common thing in the marketplace right now. So why are we doing so well despite those market forces? If you go look at our webinars from years past, you see we're kind of up on a soapbox a little bit about the number of groups that were getting variable rate debt, and we said, hey, when rates are at an all-time low, that seems like a not smart time to get variable rate debt. The numbers looked really good back then, but not so much today. So we made the hard choice to get fixed rate debt. We've got a mountain of fixed rate debt against our portfolio. It's all full recourse debt, which allowed us to get really good loan terms. We sign on the note, which puts a lot of skin in the game, so to speak, for us. We have a huge amount at stake in these assets because we sign on the note, whereas most groups do not. We have no rate caps to go with those variable rate loans. That's what's really squeezing a lot of groups right now. We got long-term debt. So instead of getting, 2-year debt, we got 5 or even 10-year debt on the majority of our assets. We have a huge amount of liquidity. So right now we have over $20 million in cash liquid, which is a hard thing to do. It takes an extraordinary amount of discipline to marshal that liquidity, to deploy that liquidity conservatively and wisely. But Elaine and I, we grew up with very little, and we have a tremendous respect for money and the power, the safety that comes with marshaling that liquidity. Our vertical integration, you're going to see some things today on the Georgetown webinar where there's no way we could do this deal if we didn't own a third-party property management company. So it's not just that we're able to reduce expenses, is that we're able to take on projects that someone who doesn't themselves own a property management company, they can't take on. And finally, we love temperate blue ocean markets. So we go to the, where the puck is going, to quote Wayne Gretzky, and we try to avoid hot spots. So, tons of people are investing in the Sun Belt in, say Phoenix or Austin, and those markets right now are contemplating negative 10% year-over-year rent growth. So if you rented a unit for $1,000 a month last year in Phoenix, that same unit might be $900 per month this year. It's extraordinarily difficult to make a profitable business in that sort of climate. And this was not a difficult thing to predict. At one point, 10% of all new construction in multifamily in the entire country was in Phoenix. That sure seemed like a bad time to invest in Phoenix, if you ask me, with that much supply coming online. So those are just a few of the reasons why we've had such a strong track record, and why you might want to consider some of the things that we have to share with you today.
Shall we talk about Georgetown?
I can't wait.
Yeah, it's exciting. So this is Georgetown. This is a drone photo of the neighborhood. So all of the townhomes that you see there comprise Georgetown. We have some stats coming up in an upcoming slide about the unit count, unit mix, acreage, those sorts of things. But the takeaway here is that it's a really gorgeous community. It has great road access. Just like a half a mile to one side is shopping, like Walmart, Sam's Club, some restaurants, those sorts of things. Immediately adjacent to the community is Highway 52, which is the main thoroughfare through Rochester. It's surrounded on 3 sides by this green belt, which is all government easement, so that will never be developed. So it gives it this sort of sort of enclosed, sort of country type feel. It has this like beautiful smell because of all of the trees, and yet it's just like right there, right in the thick of things. This road in the front of it is where Nick and I commute to and from our office where we're standing right now. And then also take a look in the background here. You'll see up in the upper left corner, if you're looking at the screen, there's some dirt over here that's being moved. So this parcel has historically been vacant, and it is actively being developed. There's bulldozers and just all sorts of stuff. It's crazy how much activity has happened there this summer. And this will be retail, shopping, office, some additional housing. It's going to be a really nice addition to this Northwest Rochester area that's really going to elevate the Georgetown community. Georgetown is great right now in terms of proximity to things that you would access via car, like say Highway 52 or the shopping that's just right across the highway. And it will now, after this development happens over the next several years, be a community that's walkable. We don't know exactly what's going into this area now, as the developer is just working on getting the parcel ready and then starting to, work with people that will buy portions of that parcel. But it will be things like grocery store, hair salon, nail salon, massage, laundry, dry cleaner.
Feminine amenity mix there.
I
You
went through
nailed
like
it.
my favorite list of things. So it'll be a really nice walkable amenity for the folks at Georgetown. So very excited about how the community was designed when it was built 20 years ago, the government easement that protects all of the space around it, its proximity in Rochester in terms of road access and local commerce, and then really excited about the lift that's going to happen from the development that's happening in that corner there.
And that new development is not something that the current owners or the property manager was aware of. So, whenever you can develop, we call it an asymmetric advantage or an unfair advantage. Whenever you see something that other people don't see, that's when you can create massive value in any real estate deal.
Yeah. Some other things to notice from this picture is there's 2 playgrounds. You can see there's one in the middle of the playground or in the middle of the community. That's more for like your, 5 to 12-year-olds, bigger equipment there. And then there's a tot lot over on what's the bottom right corner of the picture here. So more like smaller equipment for younger kids. A tot lot. Yep. Very uncommon to have 2 playgrounds in a community, so that's a really nice amenity. And then you'll also notice in the front here, toward the road, you can't exactly see it, but if you know what you're looking for here, you'll see that the space between this back row of townhomes is actually like the front row of townhomes toward the road. That's actually a nice upper incline there, and then there's those trees there. So as those folks are looking out their back windows or sitting on their back patios, they look into lawn. It was really nicely designed that they're not looking into road, and the sound is extremely mitigated by the way the dirt was developed as they were building this community 20 years ago, and then the trees there. So basically, like almost every home in the neighborhood, in their like backyard space, they're looking out into either a grassy or a wooded area, which is really nice to have that road access, but have that, comfortable, safe, grassy feeling in your backyard. So that's all the things to kind of catch here on the drone photo. I just love looking at it. It's just fun.
Beautiful.
It's just fun to look at.
Beautiful asset. And these are just some photos of the interiors here. You can go Google the property and see photos of it. There were not previously like updated photos available anywhere online of this asset. So they had renovated over 50 units, and there were not any photos of those renovated units available on the internet. That's a huge gap in marketing that we were able to fill. So if you want to, I don't know, Rachel, you could throw a link out from apartments.com or something like that. It's a beautiful asset. There's probably over 60 renovated units now. They look great. Even the unrenovated units look fantastic. Large square footages. Beautiful units. We can go to the next slide there, and you can see some more of the unit interiors. They're big units. So we own Douglas Trail Townhomes just down the street, as Elaine mentioned. These units are probably about 20% larger than Douglas Trail. There's a 2-story foyer when you walk in the front door. Has a very grand feeling. Many of these units are affordable units, income restricted units. They were not built like that. Like they are just a very, very premium construction style that's rare to find. There's maybe 2 other assets in all of southeastern Minnesota that would be comparable to this asset in terms of just the quality of the construction.
Yeah. So one thing that Nick mentioned there, kind of quickly, that might not have been super obvious is because the summer season is so important in Rochester for leasing, we have actually structured an arrangement with the existing owner. So even though we don't close until tomorrow, we've been, I would say, doing maybe 80% of the management of the asset for the last many weeks. Their team has still been doing maintenance and overnight types of things, but we've been doing all of the marketing and all of the leasing so that we can capitalize on this summer season so that we can have the strongest performance possible going into our close date tomorrow. So Rachel and our communications team have coordinated with like apartments.com to get the new photo shoot. Our leasing team has been handling all of the inquiries. Our application processing team has been processing all of the applications. The existing process that this community had in place, it would take at least a week to process an application, which you can imagine if you were a person who is searching for housing. A week is a long time, right? When you're in that sort of like, I don't know where I'm going to live phase and what's next. That's a phase that people like to close that loop pretty quickly. Our team can process applications in about a day or 2 days. So we're able to get people through that pipeline much faster. And then we have signed at least 9 leases. 9 was the number, I think, from Friday. So we may have had a few more leases signed over the weekend. But we did all of that because it was a win-win arrangement with the outgoing owner to make sure that we had the property in the best condition possible when we acquired it, with outgoing management that we're shoulder to shoulder with them. We're learning all of the ins and outs of the community. Obviously, they loved having, extra hands, to help with that work in the busy summer season. And then it really positions us super well that tomorrow when we close, we essentially are doing 80% of the management already. So it will be a very small operational lift to take on management of the rest of the community. So that's why we got all the new photos, and we're working hard on getting the community up to our standards for marketing and leasing.
When I mentioned a minute ago, you can't do a deal like this without vertical integration, without owning a property management company. I mean, we're not getting any compensation for these activities. We're doing it just because we own the asset along with investors in our fund. And we know that if we take over the asset and there's only half a dozen vacancies going into the fall, that's going to be a lot better financial outcome than if we take over and there's 17 vacancies going into the fall. So it's unheard of to see a property management company step in, help with leasing, prior to closing. But because we're not just the managers, we're the owners. It's a no-brainer to create a win-win deal like that.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk a little bit about the stats of the property. So Georgetown is 132 units, so it's a really nice size, kind of gets over that 100 units that many firms are looking for to get that economies of scale. It was built as 2 phases. The first phase was a 100-unit development, and then the second phase, they added an additional 32 units. About 2/3 of the community is an income restricted community. So that is not Section 8, it's what's called Section 42. And Section 42 of the IRS code basically says that the government will give the original developer tax credits for the first 15 years in exchange for that community having some income and rent restrictions for 30 years. So we are in that second 15-year period. So those tax credits have expired, but they're still in the restriction period. And we really like that, that second 15-year period. Number one, because the buyer pool is much more limited. Number two, because families can grow their income and their wealth during that time. So in the first 15 years, a family is income tested every single year. And so you can imagine that leads to situations where people say, turn down promotions at work, or maybe are afraid to go back to school in order to get a better career, or maybe are afraid to get married because then there would be two incomes in the home. Whereas in the second 15 years, families are only income tested when they first enter into the lease, during that leasing and application process. And then after that, they can earn whatever they would like to earn. So they can go to school, they can get married, they can get promotions, they can change jobs, whatever it is. So we really like that 15-year period because we find that it's a really nice mix between kind of running a community as an income restricted community, but also sort of running it as a market rate community. And then this particular community is, sort of even better than that, in that 2/3 of the units are income restricted and the other 1/3 are just market rate. So we find that to be like a really sweet spot. That's the same as our Douglas Trail townhomes in Rochester, which is just a few miles from Georgetown. The communities that we have in Tacoma that are Section 42 are also in that second 15-year period. It's a niche market that we have really decided to become experts in over the last several years.
Awesome. Yeah.
You want to talk about the unit mix?
Yeah, so a very desirable unit mix. It's all 2 and 3 bed townhomes. There's no 1 bed units. They all have direct access garages, which is an incredibly valuable amenity to have in our climate. People really, really like to have direct access garages. It's so much nicer than having like a detached garage, which is what you often find in an apartment building, or even structured underground parking. You're kind of sharing one big area with lots of other people. You don't really have a private space for your vehicle, your possessions. These are enormous garages. You can have like a deep freeze or refrigerator out there. You can store your trash cans in there. They're just huge units with a super desirable unit mix. Very, very desirable unit mix.
And then if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We try to answer those as we go, or get to all the questions at the end. So if any questions come up, we pop those into chat and we'd love to answer them for you. Let's talk about how we got it. So we've been working on Georgetown now for, gosh, if it's the middle of August, probably since like February. So probably about 6 months or so.
We reached out at first in January or something like that. Yeah.
Which is not uncommon for us. It often takes us a while to get through the negotiation process. I would say what's typical for Black Swan is our offer is almost always never the top offer in terms of the purchase price. And so sometimes sellers will go through a process of like, no, I'm going to take, offer A, and then that offer falls through for various reasons. And then they come back to us. That isn't what happened here. But that's a common pattern for us. So we got this deal because we're buyers, we're buyers in the market. We had already raised Fund 3, we were opening Fund 4, and we had cash. And a big part of what the seller wanted to see is that we had proof of financing and that we had proof of capital in the bank at a time when many buyers are very afraid, which is interesting to Nick and I, because we really perceive that the risky part of the interest rate escalation has passed, right? The Fed has signaled that they will be lowering rates in the near-term future because we had all fixed rate debt. The deals that we closed in, say 2021, 2022, that was, we locked in those low interest rates, so we didn't experience that risk as interest rates went up. And we think now is a great time to buy, as it's likely that rates are going to come down over the next several years. Conversely, this seller had variable rate debt. When they acquired it, they had variable rate debt. They at the time that we got under contract, their rate had increased to over 10%, and they had failed to be able to close on HUD financing. And so they would have needed to either do a very large capital call to their investors or sell the asset, and they decided to sell the asset. So they were in considerable distress. They're also an out-of-state seller. They've never visited the property. We've kind of developed a really great relationship with them.
I flew out and met with the seller face to face in Steamboat Springs, where they're based, and had just I think face to face conversations are invaluable, and I think they're very successful real estate investors, and they have added a lot of value to this asset. And they just got caught, like so many other groups got caught, with a plan of doing a variable rate loan temporarily and then refinancing to HUD once they had stabilized the property. And that's called bridge to HUD financing. That was a very common financing scheme during the pandemic, and that bridge did not go anywhere. There's a lot of people that are caught in this exact same situation.
Yep. For various reasons, they did not want their property manager to know that the asset was being marketed to sell, which is not uncommon, but is, I would say, more rare. So no buyer groups were able to see inside of a unit during the offer period. After we got it under contract, obviously, we've walked every single unit, but we had such a home field advantage because we've been driving past this asset twice a day for the last, 5 years now. And we knew people in the community. We knew people that had rented there. So we felt comfortable making an offer despite having never seen inside of a unit. Whereas other groups, maybe kind of your stereotypical like out of state group, it would be uncommon for them to offer without at least seeing like a few vacant units. And we just never gave up, just, kind of being in constant communication with the broker, constant communication with the seller, letting we were serious. We wanted to close. We had the ability to close. And then eventually we got it under contract for a very good price.
So, I mean, this is kind of the mic drop moment here. We have an appraisal in hand on this asset for $22.85 million. Our contract price is just $20.1 million. So it's an extraordinary opportunity to get into an asset with 10% day one equity against your appraisal. And usually appraisers, they don't want to give you a ton of credit against a sales price like that. And it's important to note that this appraisal was performed in September of 2023 when the interest rate environment was way worse than the interest rate environment today. So this is the appraisal from the original, bridge to HUD financing that HUD financing didn't work out. So this is just this is as good as it gets. It's so extraordinarily rare. We get great deals all the time, but it's so extraordinarily rare to see an appraisal in hand that grossly exceeds your sales price. And it gives me a lot of empathy for the seller, why this was such a kind of tooth and nail negotiation, because they wanted to get that appraised value. That was the number they were really stuck on the whole time. And we're like, nope, we're one of the few people who are buying, who have the ability to buy, and we don't think that we have to pay full price for anything in the current market environment. And ultimately, we're able to get a very favorable price on the purchase of this asset.
Let's talk a little bit about our value add plan. So as with all of our acquisitions, our value add plan is usually some combination of physical renovations and then some combination of management improvements, all with the ultimate goal of increasing income and decreasing expenses. Multifamily real estate is valued based off of what is called net operating income, which is basically all of your income minus all of your expenses. So if you can raise your income, lower your expenses, that increases NOI, which then increases the value of the buildings. We're going to go through some of our value add plan here. The first is management. So because we're vertically integrated, we slash management costs right from day one. We don't see our management as a profit center unto itself. We see the real estate asset itself as the thing that brings value, the thing that creates profit. So in-place management is $328,000 per year, and our management costs will be right around $200,000 per year. So it's a day one savings of over $100,000. I'd like to think that we also manage the asset better because we're owners and because we understand that every dollar of NOI drastically changes the value of the building. If we're in, say, a 5 cap market, a dollar of NOI increases the value of the asset by $20. So typical third-party management just doesn't quite have that I don't know, that motivation, so to speak.
There's a disalignment of incentives there. So you'll see in many of the value add things that we're going to do in Georgetown, really all we're doing is just correcting that disalignment of interest. Because there's a lot of things a management company can do that are hard, that are uncomfortable, that are time consuming, that significantly increase the net operating income of the asset. And the property management company is just not compensated to increase the NOI, as crazy as that sounds. They're really compensated to mind the store, to make sure that the site is staffed, and not much more. So just looking at this, we expect to save over $100,000 on management expense day one. And we mentioned, if you pencil in, say, a 5% capitalization rate, that would normally be like a 20x multiple on kind of ways that we add value to the asset. In this case, we would say this would add at least $1 million value, not necessarily 2 million, because time and time again when we get appraisals performed, the appraiser says, whoa, you guys are paying way too little for management. They almost think we're making up how little the management expense is for the asset, and we have to show them management agreements and everything, and explain that we're a vertically integrated management company, and say, well, if we were to go hire a third-party management company, if a potential buyer were to hire a third-party management company, well, they would pay so much more, so we're going to use a higher number. But just demonstrating that it's possible to manage that asset for such a significant reduction in management expense, that increases the value of the asset by at least $1 million day one, just by putting our management company in place and nothing else.
Next, let's talk about property taxes. So that's a big one for any real estate, from a single family home to a large multifamily community,
Critical.
Office, whatever. Whenever there's a transaction, that usually is a trigger to the local municipality to investigate that parcel's property taxes, and property taxes
increase your taxes.
They usually go up. So property taxes and insurance are the big ones that everyone needs to be thinking about when they're doing a multifamily acquisition. And we have some really good news to share about property taxes.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a great opportunity to ask questions. If some of these are like a little bit deep in the weeds, or they just seem, this will seem almost unbelievable, some of the ways that we're able to add value to assets. So feel free to chime in here if you have any questions. So there's a legislative change that's coming from the Minnesota state government, where the state government is requiring municipalities to lower the taxes that they levy against income restricted communities. So this is rolling out for 2025. And there's a little bit of kind of complex math there that I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds, but basically 87 out of 132 of the units are eligible for this reduction in taxes. That reduction in taxes is about a 2/3 reduction on the first $100,000 in per unit value, in assessed value, which translates to about a $54,000 reduction in taxes. So we've actually already submitted the paperwork to the state to become eligible for this reduction in our taxes.
This is called the 4D program.
That's right. Yep. And some assets, they're not even aware of this stuff, so they're not enrolled. They don't submit the paperwork to the state and apply, because the state has to kind of like make the municipality reduce your taxes. Essentially, it's a state government initiative to increase affordable housing accessibility. We have an amazing compliance officer on staff, a W-2 employee, which is pretty unusual, and she has already submitted all of our paperwork to be eligible for this tax deduction. This savings, by the way, is not penciled into our pro forma, because we don't know for sure exactly what that reduction amount will be. It's kind of up to the discretion of the assessor, how they apply it and stuff, but it will be just a massive reduction. We're going to say at least 50K, which would add $1 million in value to this asset, because that's a permanent reduction in the taxes.
Awesome. Next up, let's talk about the gas meters, and then we'll talk about water meters.
Hope you've got a cup of coffee for this. It might seem a little dry, but I hope you see, like, this is where all the money is. This boring, not sexy stuff.
This is what Nick tries to talk to me at like 10 o'clock at night after we put the kids to bed.
Gas meters, babe, gas meters.
And I'm like, we'll talk about it in the morning. We'll talk about it in the morning. He lives and breathes this stuff. So as you may remember from earlier in the slides, the community was built in 2 phases. The first was 100 units. The second was 32 units. And the first 100 units all had individual gas meters, which is what you might expect in a townhome community, right? It sort of, behaves more like a single family home, where there's individual water, individual gas, individual heat and air, those sorts of things. The second phase, that 32 unit phase, it's all shared meters. They were doing that to reduce costs, to increase construction speed, all sorts of reasons why they made that decision at that time. And itself, it's not a completely uncommon decision to make. I would say it's less common for townhomes to have shared gas, but not completely uncommon. So unfortunately, what the current ownership group and current management group has decided to do is, because the 32 units have shared gas is included in the rent. And then because of that, they include gas for all of the units. So they don't do any,
You're actually thinking of the water meters,
thinking of the water meters.
but this confusion is the epitome of the problem.
Go for it. Take it away.
No, you nailed it. It's really hard to keep all this stuff straight.
It is.
Which unit is income restricted? Which unit is market rate? Which unit pays for its own water bill? Which unit pays for its own gas bill? Like it's very cognitively demanding to manage this. And so the property management companies over the years, they've basically just done kind of whatever was easiest, even
A
though
lot of standardized policies.
even though
that
it makes zero
that
financial
lose
sense for
value.
the asset. So like in this picture here, the green units for gas meters, not water meters, the green ones, they're paying their own gas bill mostly. Then the orange buildings, they could be paying their own gas. They have gas meters, but they're not paying it just because that's the convenient thing for the management company to do. The red building, we're going to add gas meters to that building, and that'll allow us to get to a place where we can just say every single unit pays their own gas. And all of a sudden it gets simpler. Now, it's not simple to go retrofit gas meters. It requires permits and wrangling the utility companies, and they push back on that. But then the moment we go spend, let's call it $10,000 installing those gas meters, we can now just say it's all that cognitive complexity goes away. Every unit pays their own gas bill. That's it.
And it's only one building, so
yeah.
it'll be relatively easy.
Yeah, it's unreal. Okay, so let's go to the next slide for water meters, and then everything.
I hope y'all are taking notes on this.
And then everything you said is completely correct. Yeah.
Say it again.
So the green boxes now. So remember, so we flipped the colors now. The green boxes, they're the ones where the water metering is correct because they don't have individual water meters, so the landlord's paying the water. All of the buildings in the red boxes, the owner is currently paying the water bill for those units, even though there's individual water meters on over 100 units, just because that's the cognitively simple thing to do, to just say, yep, landlord pays all the water, landlord pays all the gas. And by the way, we have to submit paperwork to the state on all these. We have to do utility calculations for every single unit, which is another layer of complexity that goes with this. But at the end of the day, we're going to save a staggering amount of money and ultimately improve the environment. All the studies show that when tenants pay their own utility bills, consumption goes down. So it's the good thing for the tenant because they have less total cost than just paying an escalated rent to the landlord. It's the good thing for the owner because it generates more profit ultimately for the landlord. And it's the best thing for the environment because it reduces consumption. Between these two tweaks, we will add over $1 million of value to this asset. None of this stuff, we have spreadsheets with 10,000 cells calculating all this stuff. None of this stuff is easy or simple, but when we're done, just doing the hard thing from the management perspective is going to create massive value for everyone involved. All right.
Love it.
Love it.
Next up, there's a model unit. It's very common for us to remove the model unit. We generally don't find model units to be that compelling. We do the hard work of showing whatever unit is vacant at that time, right? People are always moving in and out. Our team is always doing turnovers. And so we show those units. When we couple that with really good high quality media, so when I say media, I mean a professional photo shoot, a drone photo shoot, a Matterport, which is like a 3D tour. I'm sure you guys have all seen those where you can click on like the white circles and sort of walk through the unit as though you're physically in it. When we have all of that media, plus we're able to show vacant units, we find that model units are not very compelling, and the additional revenue that can come from model units far outweighs any of the benefit that comes from model units. So we've removed model units across our entire portfolio. And then there's also a potential that we could convert the site office to a studio unit. That one's a little harder, it requires permits and those sorts of things, but there is that potential there. In doing so, we could get 2 additional units, which may not seem like much, but anytime you're already sending someone to mow the lawn, you already have a manager, you're already, say, dealing with 132 gas bills, where you might as well deal with 134. You get these economies of scale. Those last units it's a little bit of a shortcut to say this, but you can kind of think of them as like pure profit.
Absolutely.
Right? Same as like a grocery store, right? There's a reason why they have all the candy and gum and those sorts of things, toward the end, yes, those things may only cost you, a couple of dollars, but they're just pure profit because you're already there in the grocery store. You've already, parked in the parking lot that they had to maintain, came into the building that they had to, staff and utilities and all of those sorts of things, purchase your things, and then you add those couple of extra dollars to your cart at the end, and that drastically improves the profitability for your grocery shopping run. It's the exact same thing in multifamily housing. So 1 or potentially 2 units is a staggering amount of value creation. The model unit will happen, as soon as we close, and then we'll start working with the city on potential permits and those sorts of things for converting the site office to a studio unit.
So here's a, kind of a summary. We did a deep dive into a few of these things because they can be a little confusing to understand or maybe just unbelievable. Like to me, it's unbelievable when I look at, how an in-place management company would just pay everyone's water bill, even though that's a lose approach, but it's the easy approach. So we talked about reducing management costs, reducing taxes, improving metering situation with water and gas meters, eliminating the show unit, in-house lawn and snow. So right now there's actually a really nice John Deere rig that has everything needed for snow removal and lawn care. And they hire a vended third-party service anyway, because that's the SOP for that property management company. There's literally the equipment right there on site. If they would just throw their maintenance guy on that tractor once a week, they could significantly reduce the lawn and snow expense for the asset. We have in-house lawn and in-house snow, and we're not afraid to have our maintenance guy go, jump on the tractor once a week. So we're going to add over $250,000 to the asset value just by bringing lawn and snow in-house using the equipment that's already there on site. Optimizing the unit mix. This is another, very complex spreadsheet exercise, but the way the income restriction works, you're allowed to have too many income restricted units, but you're not allowed to have too many market rate units. And so what's happened over the years is, let's say they have a market rate unit that's open and they get a really great leasing lead for an income restricted person, and they put that income restricted person in the market rate unit. They tell the state government, okay, this is an income restricted unit now, and then that unit just stays income restricted for decades because no one went back and said, hey, I'm pretty sure we have too many income restricted units here. I think we can flip one of these back to market rate. And then we can actually go like a couple levels deeper than that, because we can optimize, okay, on a per building basis. The limits are on a per building basis, not on a per property basis. So, we probably want to have more 3 beds that are market rate than 2 beds that are market rate, because that aligns better with the leads that we're getting today. And it'll take years and lots of careful planning and spreadsheet work to do it, but it will allow us to drastically improve occupancy and ultimately revenue by optimizing that unit mix.
Anything else you wanted to talk about with like the water heaters or the paper maintenance tickets?
This is unbelievable, but last year, the management company, they spent $50,000 on water heater replacements. I'm going to say it a second time. Last year, they spent $54,000 on water heater replacements. We saw that and we're like, how could that possibly be? And then when we did our unit inspections, we walked every single unit. We have our team write down the age and condition of every furnace, every water heater, every aspect of every single unit. It's a very meticulous process. And we noted that those units in the second phase, all their water heaters were less than 3 years old. And those water heaters are very special, very expensive water heaters that can do heating of the home and heating potable water for showers and cooking and stuff like that. And out of 32 units, there was only 1 unit that had a water heater that was more than 3 years old. So they've replaced every single water heater in those 32 units in the last 3 years, except for 1 unit. And that unit had a water softener installed by the tenant. The tenant's been there for 11 years. They installed a water softener when they moved in, had a brand new water heater when they moved in, and that water heater has never been replaced. So we have this perfect, test that's been performed for our benefit. And you may or may not be aware, but installing a water softener drastically improves the lifespan of a water heater. So we went to the seller and said, this is kind of outrageous that this hasn't been fixed yet. We really need you to fix this problem before we feel comfortable closing on the property. So at the seller's expense, we've had water softeners installed in all 32 of those units. We were able to get a fantastic price from a great, licensed plumber who did all the work, got commercial grade water softeners installed. We got that price down to $27,000. So literally for half of the cost of what they spent just on water heater replacements in 1 year alone, we fix this problem so we can stop replacing those water heaters.
And that's already done.
Yeah, that's already
That was
done
part of our
prior to
contract
closing.
period.
Yeah, so that by itself will add over $800,000 to the value of the asset. Again, assuming, like a 5% capitalization rate. Maintenance tickets. So right now, literally, someone has to walk into the office and there's a stack, a pad of physical maintenance tickets. They fill it out and they hand it to the site manager, and the site manager physically hands it to the maintenance person, which, as you can imagine, is a really slow, really inefficient process. It's not good for customer satisfaction. It takes a long time to play that game of telephone to physically get that paper maintenance ticket to the maintenance tech. We are going to put all of our normal systems in place where we have an all electronic system. And then, Elaine mentioned LIHTC compliance. So we have an in-house compliance officer for tax credit compliance, which is pretty unusual. The in-place property management company. So you have like a private equity fund that owns an asset that hires a third-party property management company. Then that third-party property management company, I know this sounds crazy, they hire a third-party vendor to manage their LIHTC compliance. So even though they're the property management company, it's so horrible, frankly, to manage your compliance. It's a lot of shuffling government paperwork and dealing with government bureaucrats that they hire that out so that they don't have to despair over that. We do that in-house. We've got really great systems and processes that allows us to turn around our government compliance and applications, because you have to get every single application approved by the government. We can turn that around in an hour with our in-house compliance, whereas with the vended third-party compliance, it takes a week. And you can imagine you can lease units a lot more effectively if you're able to approve an application in an hour instead of a week.
All right, let's dive into the spreadsheet here. So if you're at a place where you're able to take a look at the screen, this would be a great slide to look at. We're going to go through the numbers verbally. You can catch the replay, those sorts of things, but this would be one where visually seeing it would be, quite helpful as well. So basically what we have here is the seller financials, how we think the asset will perform at closing, and then what our future target is. And NOI and cash flow are kind of the two big ones to look at. So I'm sure, Nick can go through the details here, but if you think about the seller financials, NOI is about 1.15 million. And then at closing, we will increase the NOI to about 1.23 million. That largely comes from changing of management, decreasing vacancy, which we've already done by filling 9 of the units before we even acquired the property. And then all of those other optimizations that we just talked about in the last, say, 5 to 6 slides there or so will further increase income and largely decrease expenses. And so our NOI target is right under 1.7 million. And then at a 5 cap, you can take any of those numbers, multiply it by 20, and that's, say, the value of the asset. You never know exactly what the cap rate will be, at time of refi and those sorts of things, but 5 is a good number because it's prevailing in our market, and then it's just a quick multiple of 20. And then that also drastically increases the cash flow. So at time, the seller financials are about 250,000 for cash flow, and our future target is about 800,000 of cash flow. So we predict that Georgetown will have very strong cash flow kind of, right after closing, a few months later, as we start to operationalize some of those administrative changes with the water bills and the gas bills and those sorts of things. And then over time, increase the cash flow to about 800,000. So very much fits into both the model of getting cash flow distributions out from our fund as quickly as possible, and then also increasing the NOI of the building so that we can hit that cash out refi target, which is really, the big day in any of our private equity funds. When we do a full return of capital, we get to that infinite rate of return period in that indefinite hold. So that's what we have here. I'm sure you probably want to add some things there.
This is a super conservative pro forma, and some of these numbers have changed a little bit over time as we've gone through the contract period. But I'll call out like taxes. We expect taxes are actually going to go down by more than $50,000. We're not assuming that necessarily in our pro forma. Insurance has been a roller coaster ride on this asset. We could do an entire webinar just on insurance. Our final resting point for insurance is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of probably about $50,000, which is more than we expected. But our initial insurance quote was actually $170,000. We were able to do some really clever, creative stuff. We actually have multiple insurance companies working together to kind of optimize our quote. So we actually ended up in a really good place in terms of insurance. The seller financials indicated about 100 grand for repair, maintenance, and cleaning, which in my opinion is quite low. So we're penciling in $200,000 for repair and maintenance. Maybe we do better than that, but we just try to be conservative in everything that we estimate there. We're going to assume the seller data for trash. I think we actually can get that cost reduced just a little bit. We have a proposal in hand. We can't execute it yet because we don't own the property yet, but we'll hopefully be able to lower that by maybe $5,000 or $6,000 per year. Our gas expense, we're going to be able to optimize the heck out of that. Same with water, but we're not necessarily assuming that in our pro forma. So I'm just kind of calling out some of these buckets where you can see we are extremely, extremely conservative in our pro formas. Maybe we encounter something where like, the utility companies won't let us add the few gas meters we need to add, or maybe it turns out there's some reason that we just can't perceive why it makes sense for the landlord to be paying the water bill for every single unit when that's just not necessary from what we see right now. And then talking about renovations, so we're going to go through, we're going to update sockets, switches, faucets, fixtures, paint, flooring, stainless steel appliance package, and just create massive value for these units. When we first got started on the contract period for this asset, there was about 45 renovated units. I believe there are over 60 renovated units today, largely because we've stepped in and helped them kind of push project management forward, if that makes sense. We've actually had our staff out walking job sites, saying, hey, we need to get this contractor out here. We need to get that contractor out here, helping them optimize their costs and efficiency to, again, just create a win-win deal. So we actually picked up 15 or 20 renovated units through that contract period just by creating a win-win deal between us, the seller, and the management company. And we're very confident that when we're actually doing those renovations ourselves, we'll be able to reduce rehab duration by about 3/4. I think we could probably get in and out of these units in just a couple of weeks instead of a couple of months. And right now they're spending as much as $10,000 on a unit renovation. I'm pretty sure we can get it done for half that cost. For example, they're hiring third-party vendors to do flooring installation and do paint, which is the norm in the industry. We do paint and flooring in-house, which is really unusual, but it's something that we do that drastically improves quality and reduces cost.
Let's talk about debt. I feel like debt is kind of the big one to, it's always that a real estate deal is half the deal itself and then half debt, certainly more so over the last few years during the changing interest rate environment. So we will have a Fannie Mae loan on this. You get all sorts of like credits in the Fannie Mae algorithm for the size, for our experience, for affordable housing, green credits, all sorts of other things. It's 5-year fixed, 1-year interest only, and we're very excited. We locked the rate probably about a week or so ago at 5.65. So, where lots of deals are coming in at like 7, 8, 9%, we're at 5.65. So not all that different than kind of the heyday honeymoon period when interest rates were, say, in the 3s. So very, very, very excited about that. With that, we do get 1-year interest only, so that'll help to juice cash flow in that early time period while we're working through those final renovations, stabilizing management, all of those sorts of things. Our total loan size is just a hair over 13 million, so we'll put about 7 million down plus operating reserves. And then one of the things that we've pre-negotiated, because we know our business plan is a cash out refi plan. We know that that's the main target for our fund, is to get to that infinite rate of return period. We've already negotiated with Fannie Mae that we're eligible for what's called a supplementary cash out refi of about 50% of our cash in. So in terms of the overall cash out refi plan, it will be a combination of the strong cash flow, particularly in year 1 that comes from that IO period, and then is escalating as we lock in the improvements that we're going to have to the community from this supplementary cash out refi, and then from whatever refi we do when that 5-year term is up. So very excited about that. For anyone, here's our next slide, actually. For anyone that's been following interest rates, I highly recommend, if you are an active real estate investor, that you're checking the 5-year treasury or the 10-year treasury, basically every day. It just takes like 30 seconds, and it really informs how the real estate market is behaving, because interest rates are so critical to real estate because of the use of mortgages in the real estate industry. So this is just a little snippet of the 5-year treasury. So even though the Fed, right, Jerome Powell, held interest rates steady during their last meeting, the market is separate from the Fed. So the 5-year treasury is when people go and say, I want to buy some US treasuries that will pay a fixed rate. And then 5 years from now, I cash those in. So it's different than the Fed. You kind of need to analyze the Fed, the 5-year treasury, and the 10-year treasury are the 3 pieces of data that we're looking at the most. And you can see there's been a drastic decrease in the 5-year treasury. So from about 4.6 to 3.7 over just the last, say, like 8 to 10 weeks. And it kind of all the stars aligned that allowed us to lock at 5.65 at a very low rate. Versus when we got it under contract. Because we got it under contract back when the 5-year treasury was more at that like 4.5, 4.6. Well, against a $20 million purchase price, that 1% spread in interest rates is huge, right? Because that determines how much debt you can get, which determines how much a buyer is willing to offer. So we estimate that just market forces alone probably have increased the value of the community by about $1 million versus when we got it under contract. And then we're excited to see, where interest rates will continue to go as we do that supplementary cash out refi. Interest rates will be critical there. And then eventually as we do our ultimate cash out refi and we kind of chase interest rates down over the coming months and years.
Yep. We've talked about this a lot. The current site manager, they're trying their heart out, but they've got multiple sites to manage. And so we've just stepped in to help them, created just a win-win-win deal for the seller, for the existing property management company, for Black Swan. It's going to be a really smooth transition. We just have a running start to that transition effort. We've been able to add massive value to the asset prior to closing.
Yeah, this really is going to be one of our smoothest transitions. We've generally worked with, good property managers that have helped us through that transition period. I would say the transition takes anywhere from, say, 2 to 4 weeks. And there's just all these things of like, I see 2 leaseholders here, but I know there's kiddos in that unit, but I don't have their names. And they're like, oh yeah, that's over in this piece of paper. I see that, this lease is up for renewal, but I don't have the renewal document anywhere, but it says it's already been signed. Oh yeah, that's over here. And we've kind of absorbed that time because our leasing team and our operations team have already been working with the property manager over the last about 6 weeks or so. So in a lot of ways, usually our closing day is sort of this, celebration day plus all hands on deck. Like, okay, guys, we have 100 files we need to get through. We need to start calling all the residents and looking at all the maintenance tickets. And, you can imagine, say, if you're like taking over a hospital in one day, right? Like what that might feel like. And this one's going to be so much smoother because we've eased into management over the last several weeks. Let's spend the last few minutes that we have together talking about Douglas Trail Townhomes. So this is one that is owned inside of Black Swan Real Estate Fund 2. Georgetown will be half owned by Fund 3 and half owned by Fund 4. Douglas Trail is owned by Black Swan Fund 2. We purchased this in November of 2022 for $11 million. It's 100 townhomes. It's also an income restricted Section 42. It's about 3 miles away, and you can see it even sort of looks the same. It has vinyl siding. It's surrounded, it's a large campus surrounded by grass. It has the direct entry garages, the direct entry front door, 2-story townhomes. We really think of them as like brother sister properties. In a lot of ways, Georgetown is so much nicer because it's in a bit of a better location. It's very wooded, so it has more of like a premium sort of like lodge style. And then the units are about 30% larger. So the units at Douglas Trail, I would say they are more directly comparable to, say, like an apartment unit, but a family that wants, say, their own garage, to have the bedrooms on the second floor, those sorts of things. And Georgetown is probably more directly comparable to, say, a single family home because there's more square footage per unit. At the time that we acquired Douglas Trail, it was in much worse physical and management condition than Georgetown. At that time, half of the tenants were in some sort of payment arrears, largely because of management that chose not to enforce their rental policies. It was in violation of city code. It was in danger of losing its rental license, and it needed rather extensive renovations and repairs to not only kind of the community as a whole, but individual units. And we've been very excited about how Georgetown has performed over the last 2 years. During the last 2 years, it was not very exciting. It was
lots of hard work.
probably the single hardest property.
Absolutely.
Probably the one that Nick and I were, have been most personally involved in, and we're very involved in our portfolio, but this one just needed, it
Need a lot of love.
it just needed that extra, touch, because it's a large community. There are all sorts of balls in motion. But the success of this community, largely influenced our desire to go after Georgetown so aggressively, because we realized, man, if we can turn around Douglas Trail and create so much value in that community, then Georgetown is just like an absolute no-brainer to add to the portfolio.
So let's see how things turned out. When we bought Georgetown, in-place NOI was about 542,000, and our, kind of like last month's NOI annualized is about $1 million. We've doubled NOI in about 18 months. That's a crazy achievement. That's unheard of, to be able to turn around an asset this big that fast that affects such a huge financial turnaround. We spent about $1.7 million on renovation of that asset. So I think at one point we had about 30 different townhomes that were being renovated concurrently. So it's just a staggering construction effort that we were managing there. There might have
We
been...
drive through this community every Sunday.
Yeah, that was...
So Georgetown gets us every day. Douglas gets us once a week.
Yep. We retrofitted in-unit laundry. We renovated, I think it's over 90% of the units now. And Georgetown is just in such a great starting point. It's going to be so much easier to create massive value for Georgetown. So I look at the success that we've been able to create with Douglas Trail, and you might look at Georgetown and say, how could it be possible to achieve those kinds of financial outcomes? Well, look down the street and see what we did with Douglas Trail, and it's going to be even easier to achieve those same outcomes at Georgetown.
And if you want a deeper dive into Douglas Trail's performance, we have our quarterly updates that are all available on YouTube. Rachel has gone through great lengths to have all of our quarterly updates in one place on our website, so I'm sure she'll link that here. I believe it is blackswanteam.com/performance for people that are listening, and that'll have all of our quarterly updates, both the videos, and you can just kind of find the Douglas Trail section and watch that, and then also the PDF brochures. So you can look for the Douglas Trail quarterly updates, but this is kind of the summary update of what's happened over the last 2 years. And we're now in early conversations with the lender to talk about a cash out refi. That process does take time. Lenders want to see that financials have stabilized for what's called a T12, a trailing 12. Sometimes they'll be okay with like a T6 or a T9. So there's still time to go before we're able to do that cash out refi, but well within that 5-year period, probably more like, say, a 3 or 3.5 year period for Douglas Trail, and every reason to believe that Georgetown and Douglas Trail will behave quite similarly to each other.
So to kind of put a bow on things here, if you're contemplating investing in Fund 4 and getting the opportunity to invest in Georgetown, which I think is one of the best deals we've ever done, we have a very simple investment thesis. If you just buy good assets in a good location, take good care of them, and plan to hold them indefinitely, you're going to do extraordinarily well. And then finally maximizing velocity of capital, just like Elaine was talking about, pushing for a cash out refi as fast as we possibly can. Even in a high interest rate environment, we're working on multiple cash out refis right now. And it's that simple. Like we don't need to make it any more complex than this. We don't need to be fancy. Just buy good stuff in a good spot and take good care of it. Hold onto it for a while. You're going to do extraordinarily well. And I see that, easily coming to fruition with Georgetown Homes.
Yep, super excited about that. So that's our deep dive into the Georgetown asset specifically. For those of you that are in Fund 3, you are already an owner of Georgetown. For those of you that would like to join Fund 4, you can become an owner of Georgetown. If you'd like to invest in Black Swan Real Estate Fund 4, it is still open. You can do that at blackswanfund4.com. Nick and I are available. You can block a time on our calendar if you have any additional questions. Rachel's available with any technical questions you may have about logging into the portal, signing the documents, those sorts of things. But from the time you decide to invest until you're done with the paperwork, it often takes people just as little as like 15 minutes. So it's all quite simple. You can fund right there within the portal. The full launch webinar for Black Swan Fund 4 is available there at the website blackswanfund4.com. If you're newer to us, if you want to learn more about our business model in terms of cash out refi and the indefinite hold period and those sorts of things, all of that is in that launch webinar. What we really wanted to do here today was spend time going into a deep dive of this asset. We already did one for Stonehaven Apartments, which is also in Fund 4. And then in the next few weeks, we'll do one for Boulder Ridge Townhomes, which is also going to go into Fund 4. Because there's just so much goodness to talk about that we can't do like an 8-hour fund launch webinar, nor do I think you want to sit for an 8-hour fund launch webinar. So we have our fund launch webinar, which you can kind of think of as like the whole story. And then we have these deep dives where you can get more specific information about each of the assets that are going into Fund 4. We're super excited about Fund 4. We're excited about the asset mix that we've been able to get into it.
Getting crazy deals on these assets.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Sellers and brokers are eager to be in discussions right now. We think there's this like really special opening in the market right now. We're excited about where the market's going in terms of interest rates over the next months and years. And then just really excited about the value add plans and the, the proven work that we've been able to do, right? We're very excited about the success of Stonehaven Apartments because we've been running Stonehaven Townhomes for 4+ years. We're very excited about Georgetown because we've been operating Douglas for 2+ years. Very excited about Boulder Ridge because it's another townhome community that, we have that experience with Stonehaven, Douglas Trail, the rest of our portfolio. So it's just so fun to see the projected success that we have with these assets based on the past performance of our portfolio, and would love to have you join in with that. We'll wait for 30 seconds or so if there's any questions that pop into chat. Rachel has put into chat links to the performance updates, blackswanteam.com/performance. Our Calendly is calendly.com/Elaine Stoggeberg or Nick Stoggeberg. Blackswan4.com is the website. I think that's probably everything. Of course, you can always email us if you have any questions. Email Rachel. We're here to support you. We're so excited for those of you that have already invested, and for those of you considering investing, I hope you're as excited about Georgetown as we are. We're off to talk to the accountants to get some wires over for closing day, and then tomorrow we sign a bunch of paperwork. So
already signed, I think. We'll see. Hopefully we don't have a lot of paperwork.
We have a little more to sign tomorrow. Yeah. Well, thank you all for your time and attention today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. The replay will go out here in the next day or so. We have a community power hour coming up next week on Monday, August 19th in the evening. We're going to dive into our top lessons learned from a short-term rental portfolio. So very excited about that. So many of you asked questions about how that journey has gone for us over the last year. On September 9th, we have our September Community Power Hour. We'll be doing a state of the market, and all of that will be in the emails and on social media and those sorts of things. But mark your calendar for some of those upcoming webinars we have. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.